With the end of the 60-day legislative session just a day away, we take a look at some of the top issues making news at the Roundhouse. Stephanie Garcia Richard, the state's public lands commissioner, has announced a run for lieutenant governor. And UNM has announced the revitalization efforts for its South Campus area by acquiring and planning to demolish a Motel 6. From the Albuquerque Journal, this is the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. It's Friday, March 21st, and I'll have more on those stories in a few moments, plus a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast on the other side of this break.
This episode is brought to you by the Kirtland Partnership Committee. For 30 years, we've been dedicated to supporting, growing, and preserving the Kirtland National Security Complex. We work tirelessly to enhance military readiness, foster community partnerships, improve quality of life, and promote economic development right here in New Mexico. Join us in our mission to ensure that Kirtland remains a cornerstone of national security and a key provider of quality jobs and investment for all of Greater Albuquerque. Together, we can make a powerful impact. Kirtland Partnership Committee, proudly shaping the future of our national security for 30 years.
As New Mexico's 60-day legislative session nears its end, lawmakers have approved a $10.8 billion state budget and a $1.2 billion capital outlay plan for public works projects. However, a tax package aimed at providing income tax breaks for around 100,000 residents remains in limbo due to a Senate amendment. The tax package initially proposed eliminating personal income taxes for some working-class residents and was offset by a 0.28% surtax on oil sales projected to generate $130 million in 2026. The Senate removed this oil tax before passing the bill 36-1, adding other tax credits, but leaving the package no longer revenue neutral. In response, the House rejected the Senate's changes, potentially sending the bill into a conference committee to negotiate a compromise before the session ends. Meanwhile, the Senate approved the capital outlay bill in a 25-16 vote, with Republicans opposing a $10 million allocation for a reproductive health clinic. The House also accepted Senate changes to the budget bill, which includes $100 million for a new behavioral health trust fund. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has until April 11th to act on these bills with the power to veto specific spending items. The governor also signed a major overhaul to New Mexico's Department of Game and Fish into law, but vetoed a provision that would have made it harder to remove Game Commission members. This partial veto may face a legal challenge, as critics question whether the governor has the authority to strike non-spending provision from bills. Lujan Grisham defended her decision, arguing that a stricter removal process could leave corrupt or incompetent commissioners in place for years. The bill's backers, however, insist it was not a spending bill and suggest the veto was politically motivated. Despite this, most of the bill remains intact and will take effect by 2026. It renames the agency as the Department of Wildlife and expands its regulatory authority and introduces a nominating committee for selecting commissioners. This marks another attempt to reform the commission after a 2023 bill was vetoed. While some lawmakers are disappointed, they are reluctant to pursue legal action and prefer to focus on implementing the reforms. Additionally, the governor signed two bills benefiting veterans, one expanding a property tax exemption and another granting free access to state parks starting on June 20th. In other legislative news, a bill requiring New Mexico lobbyists to disclose their stances on legislation is now awaiting the governor's signature. While supporters say it will increase transparency, some lobbyists argues it creates logistical challenges and was crafted without their input. Currently, lobbyists only report their employers and expenditures, but House Bill 143 would require them to, quote, file lobbyist activity reports and update their position within 48 hours if they change. The bill, long opposed by lobbyists, unexpectedly passed both chambers this year. While supporters see it as a major step towards government transparency, lobbyists fear it will be burdensome and difficult to implement. Opponents of the legislation include longtime lobbyist J.D. Bullington and Charles Marquez. They both argue updating reports frequently will overwhelm both lobbyists and the state's filing system. They propose less frequent reporting requirements instead. However, the bill's sponsor, Senator Jeff Steinborn, insists that the bill is responsible and will become routine, and gives the Secretary of State's office time to address technical issues before it takes effect in 2027. Despite opposition, the bill aligns with national national trends in transparency, according to a legislative analysis. Some lobbyists are now considering forming a professional organization to better advocate for their interests. The governor has till April 11th to sign or veto the measure. And lastly, the recent arrests of 3 juveniles, including an 11-year-old in connection with a hit-and-run homicide in Albuquerque, has reignited the debate over juvenile crime laws in New Mexico's final days of the legislative session. Lawmakers referenced this case during discussions on House Bill 255, which is a measure aimed at reforming juvenile offender policies. While the bill's sponsor, Senator Antonio Momayesus, defended it as a step forward, extending probationary periods from 90 days to 6 months, critics argue it does not go far enough. The bill faced controversy after a House committee added monthly stipends for former juvenile offenders, which was later removed by the Senate. Meanwhile, a tougher bill backed by Bernalillo County DA Sam Bregman, which would have expanded the state's juvenile criminal code, stalled amid concerns about rehabilitation. This comes as data shows a 57% rise in juvenile crime cases from 2022 to 2023, despite overall crime rates declining. The hit-and-run case, in which suspects allegedly recorded themselves discussing targeting a cyclist, drew strong condemnation from Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham and Albuquerque Mayor Tim Keller. Lujan Grisham called the legislature's inaction on tougher juvenile crime laws, quote, unacceptable. With time running out in the session, it remains unclear whether any substantial reforms will pass this year. Stephanie Garcia Richard, New Mexico's Public Lands Commissioner since 2019, has announced her candidacy for Lieutenant Governor in the 2026 election. Garcia Richard, who is a Democrat from Rio Arriba County, has long been involved in state politics, serving 3 terms as a state representative before becoming the first woman to be elected as Public Lands Commissioner. During her tenure, she managed 13 acres of trust land, generating $11 billion in revenue, primarily benefiting New Mexico's public education system. While much of the revenue came from oil and gas leases, she highlighted record earnings from alternative land uses in the fiscal year of 2024. Garcia Richard hinted at future gubernatorial ambitions, but sees the lieutenant governor as the next logical step. Her announcement comes amid a competitive political landscape, as former Interior Secretary Deb Haaland has already declared her candidacy for governor, with more Democrats expected to enter the race. With the Public Lands Commissioner position limited to 2 terms, Garcia Richard is now vying to succeed Howie Morales, the current lieutenant governor, in what could be a highly contested race. And the University of New Mexico is taking a significant step forward in revitalizing its southern campus area by acquiring and planning to demolish the Motel 6 on Aventa Cesar Chavez. The $5 million purchase follows years of criminal activity at the site, which university officials say pose safety concerns for students and the surrounding community. The property, now under the management of Lobo Development Corporation, will be cleared to make way for new commercial development, including retail and dining establishments. Tom Neal, UNM's Director of Real Estate, emphasized that the demolition will reduce crime and align with the university's vision of a more vibrant South Campus. Future developments will be guided by UNM to ensure projects contribute positively to the area. Recent investments, such as a Raising Cane's and a forthcoming In-N-Out Burger location, indicate a growing interest in the corridor. While the timeline for redevelopment depends on the market conditions, UNM aims to transform the site into a key part of its long-term growth strategy. If you like hearing all of the latest news here on The Leading News, consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal. You can check our show notes for a discount code and keep up with New Mexico's top story from the state's leading news source. Now taking a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast. Today you can expect mostly sunny skies with a high near 67, and this evening mostly clear with a low around 36. To keep up with all the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal, you can visit our website at abqjournal.com. I'm Gino Gutierrez. The Leading News will be back on Monday.